Hello everyone! Can you hear me? Is there anyone out there? Is the sound okay if you can hear me? If not, I have to do something about that. Hi Ellen! Thanks. I had a very pleasant julafton. Nice Christmas Eve. Great! Good to know someone hears me. So welcome to this stream. Hello Sandra! Welcome to this live event. Probably going to look a lot down on my screens, but we'll see how it goes. So I thought I'd start. Hey Sue! Great, thanks. I thought I'd just start with mentioning the elephant in the room, and that's that I'm not wearing my Christmas sweater. And the reason is, of course, that I got a new one. So this one I used in the thumbnail is not going to be worn today, I think, I hope, because it's not that pretty, so there's that. Also, this is supposed to be like one of those sweaters from Harry Potter that Ron Weasley's mother knitted for Harry Potter in Christmas time. I hope it's Christmas time because that's half the point, I guess. So, and it has my letter. It's a bit long down. Wish it was higher up, but it looks really good. Yes, Ellen, I got 2 books for Christmas. I can show you. I got these 2 for Christmas, and I know absolutely nothing about them. I guess they're both sci-fi, and sci-fi is a genre I haven't read yet, so that's kind of fun. It's from a really good friend of mine, so I guess he knows what I like. He also knows that I don't read that much sci-fi, so we'll just see. Maybe this is the beginning of a new and exciting 2023 for me. But we'll just have to wait and see. But really happy with those. Did you get any books, Ellen, for Christmas? I guess you got more books than me, I think. Leviathan Wakes. Okay. Is it a series of books? These ones? Or that one? Yeah. I turned down the latency for the chat this time, but I do not know how quickly the chats are appearing to me and you, so if I answer quite slowly, that's probably the reason. Yes. So in today's video, I thought I'd talk a bit about reading goals for this year that has been, also goals for me and my channel, and at the end I thought we'd discuss goals for going forward in 2023. I do like making goals, but this year I don't know about. So, since last stream I downloaded Storygraph, but I haven't yet begun using it, so we'll have to wait and see. But I do think that that's a better platform than Goodreads for now. Goodreads is quite the annoying place to be, so I guess I'll switch when the time comes, and I hope that will be like 1st of January or something. I'll probably use both platforms for a while and then we'll see. And also, since last time, I've finally finished my shelves, so behind me I have now a complete wall of books, which makes me really happy, and I'll post a picture later showing you how it's looking. It's looking really good, I would say. 2 Jane Austen books for Ellen, and a science fiction book, as well as a Swedish book. Nice. So only 4 books, that's twice the amount that I got, but we all know we don't actually need more books, but I'm happy you got 4. That's really good. So, I actually did a poll for my subscribers a little while ago asking if you had any reading goals, because I felt like everyone I saw on Instagram, for example, they were crushing their reading goals, and I thought, is this something everyone does? Because that feels wrong. I don't know about you, but if you have goals that you always achieve, is that a good thing or not? And did you get to reach your reading goals this year? Or are you still fighting with these last days to complete the list? Well, my subscribers told me that most of them are crushing their reading goals, but about half of them are not or don't have any reading goals. And at this moment, I'm thinking about if I should have reading goals or not for next year. It's not like the answer gives itself, because it's kind of stressful as well. It's not always just hunky-dory. So do you have reading goals for next year? And are you aiming high? I know many people have like, I want to read 12 books. That's a common number amongst people I see. Then it's one a month. Also, one book a year is also a common reading goal. I don't know why people set one book as a reading goal, because that would mean that, of course, you easily get to reach that goal, but do you want to have the statistics on Goodreads or something like that? Is that the reason? I don't actually know. But also 50 books seems common, because 50 is around a nice number. So there's that. I had 53, and I'll show you in a minute how that went. So Elin or Lunacha Books says, had a goal to read 50 books, there we go, every year since 2005. There has been years where I didn't reach it. One of the years I lived in Sandnes, I only read 22 or 24 books. Yeah, I would also struggle to reach 50 books each year, so I can see that one. But as I said, 50 seems to be a quite normal number, and earlier I would have thought that that seemed impossible to reach at all. 50 books is a lot to most people. I would say 99% of the people on this planet. Rough estimate. Well, I had 53 books that I thought I would try to reach, and so far that has been going great. I've reached that number, but the reading statistics on Goodreads is actually quite difficult to handle, because this also contains the audiobooks I've read, and I know many of you think that audiobooks is reading, and I agree, but I didn't want it to be a part of my reading statistics for this year, for the sole purpose that I wanted to find out how many physical books I could read. And I know that's a hang-up, if I could say it like that. It's something I think about as important to read physical books and not only audiobooks, even though it's kind of silly. I won't do that for next year for sure, also because it ruins my statistics and doesn't look really great. So I'm going to cut that one out. But I think I landed, or I'm currently reading one book by Nina Lykke, and full spread or full spredning, and I hope to be finishing that before New Year's Eve. And if I do, I think I have read 54 or 55 physical books this year. So that's a huge win for me, of course. I did not think I would reach that number, so when Lunacha or Elin says that she reads 50 books a year, that's really impressive. So there used to be a thing called 50 books a year online back in the days. Maybe that's why so many have 50. Yeah, great point. Maybe that's why that is. Yeah, I know I can use tags on Goodreads, and that's actually how I know that I've read or going to read 54 or 55 physical books, because I see how many books I've listed as audiobooks, so I can just count them out. But other than that, I do also still did not finish books. Luckily, I only have one of those this year, but it still counts as a part of my statistics, and I sort of have to either delete it, but I do want to see that I've made the effort to try to read it, so that's why I haven't gotten around to removing it, at least. Sandra, I don't like to set a number of total books to read. Prefer setting smaller goals. This year I had a goal of rereading books and another to read one Shakespeare play every 2 months. Oh, that's a cool goal. I recently read Hamlet this month actually, and that was a total surprise. Even though Elin in the chat has recommended me reading Hamlet before, I was surprised of how much I enjoyed it. So maybe I too will read more Shakespeare next year. So I hope Storygraph will deal with some of my problems with statistics, because I think statistics can be a huge part of my inspiration for reading more books next year. It's at least fun looking back on the books that you've read and thinking about all the books you want to read and how much they would amount to in the statistics later on. Well, that seemed a bit silly maybe. Yes, Hamlet just took me by surprise. I did not have any expectations, but it was pretty fast-paced, or very fast-paced I should say, and it was much shorter than I thought. Even though I knew it was a play, I thought it may be bigger than it was. So that was cool. Also, I read a new Norwegian translation by Edvard Hoem, and that was also quite fun. I learned some new Norwegian words. Yeah, I know there's a play going on right now here in Oslo, and I should go and watch a lot of plays for books I've read, but the time is difficult for those kinds of activities. Having small children leads me to read more books, because reading is one of those activities that you actually can do a lot of, because you're at home all the time. So that's pretty useful actually in that sense. So currently reading Before I Let Go by that seems like a name from the Netherlands, but I have no clue how to pronounce it. Get a lot of my commute to work. I will read Okay En Til by Linn Stemsborg. Yeah, Linn Stemsborg was also one of my good reads this year, with the Roskilde novel, or short story, somewhere in between. A short novel at least. So Elin, do you have, is 100 your goal this year? Reading 100 books? That's a lot. So, yeah, one of my other goals this year, and this goal is maybe one of the goals that surprised me the most. I had a goal of reading 5 new authors from 5 new countries. So I thought this should be easy, finding authors from countries I haven't read. Since I hadn't read that many books from before, this task seemed, to be okay. And halfway through the year I thought, well, I've got it covered. So I thought I would have read like 20 new countries by now. It was just a feeling, and looking back at it now, it was a silly feeling, because I found out that I had only read 5 new countries, and those were Belarus, Iceland, Greenland, Poland, and Nigeria. And I'm not quite completely sure if Greenland is counted as a country, or since their ties with Denmark, I guess they are a country, but something makes me feel like it's halfway there. But at least I thought that Japan would also be on the list, but I found out that I read Kazuo Ishiguro in last December, so that was like close. But then Kazuo Ishiguro may be a part of the British Society, or there are so many authors that have like a place they were born, but then they've spent so much time in Britain especially, or the US, and so they belong to that part of the world now. And it's a bit confusing, but I think I reached my goal here, but I thought I would be crushing it, but I didn't. I think one of the confusions were actually that I read several Icelandic authors, and I thought like Iceland was one of those countries I hadn't read anything from before, but then I figured out that I had. No, sorry, I hadn't, but reading 3 authors from Iceland sort of felt like reading 3 authors from 3 countries, because they were so exotic. I don't know. So, Elin says still 50, and Jake, welcome to the chat, Jake. Going to stick with 50. I guess you also, Jake, is going to crush your reading goals this year, or that's only a feeling, maybe. I think you're going to. Yeah. I find a fondness for smaller books, so maybe I'll read the next Lindström's book as well. I set up a read around in the world, the list to... yeah. It seems like you're in the same boat as me, Sandra, thinking that you've read more countries than you have. I was at least a bit surprised by how narrow my reading is. Also, one thing about this challenge was to read different perspectives, so you can do that at the same time as you are staying within a country, of course, because you have a lot of minorities that have important voices that you might want to listen to. But still, I think next year I'm going to have to try to find some new countries to read, and that will be important. Yeah, we'll just see. We'll talk a bit about this later as well. But a thing that helped me last year was that I read some of the books for the International Booker Prize, and that led me to read some countries that I wouldn't otherwise have done. And I said it a lot of times last year that forced me to do exactly that, to try to broaden my horizons. But still now, I didn't think that I would automatically just shut down and not read any new countries. So maybe I'll make a specific countries list for next year. If you have some authors from countries you're pretty sure I haven't read, just comment them in the chat and I'll try to jot it down and look back at it later. So yeah, Jake, you're on 68. Yeah, I figured. Yeah, and you didn't count the audiobooks. Yeah. Independence People and Fosse and Knausgård. It's fun that you've read Jon Fosse because of me, because I also feel like I have to read more Jon Fosse. I think maybe next year will be the time to read the Septology. And Knausgård, as you know, took me by storm this year. A huge surprise, and so by far the most surprising read of 2022. It can't get more surprising than me ending up reading Knausgård and reading all of the books in my struggle series. That's just... I wouldn't have believed it if you told me that last year. Let's just put it like that. Indonesia or India. Indonesia is not a country I've read anything from. India sort of depends where you put Salman Rushdie, I guess. He's one of those I think about when I think about the people that moved to Britain, because... And my only DNF this year was Salman Rushdie with Midnight's Children, where he wrote about India, so... I missed out on something there, but also don't think I will try to reread that one next year. Vasily Grossman's Stalingrad, Life and Fate for New Year's. So is that a Russian author? Since Stalingrad? Yeah. I still dislike Knausgård, says Elin, and I'm considering to read his other books. So we all have different perspectives and wishes for our reads, but there's something about Knausgård that just... yeah. My next video is actually about Knausgård, so if you'd like to hear me try explaining why I liked my struggle series, my next video will try to explain. But it's not that easy. So Russia, I've read like Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, so Russia is covered. But I do want maybe to read Tolstoy next year, and I think we've discussed, Jake, that I might start with Anna Karenina and not War and Peace. I have them both standing here, but Anna Karenina is supposed to be easier to start out with, so that's probably a good thing. The Ghost Bride by... Yes, Indonesia, okay. Yeah. That is noted. I think I'll try to go through the chat later on and see if you have any tips. So any tips for books in the chat is super. And maybe especially Asia is a good place to start, because I haven't really read anything from Asia except Japan, I think. Some books have surprised me earlier. Okay, India. Life and Fate. Check that one out. So, might be still some latency in the chat, so maybe I'll answer something and I'm not completely there. So, one of my other goals this year was to read 5 big books. I thought that I would force myself to read 5 big books just so I wouldn't start reading only smaller books. And the reason was simple. I thought that 53 books were too many, so having at least 5 big books to read was supposed to be a good thing. And I ended up reading something I actually really enjoyed. And one of those was Kristin Lavransdatter by Sigrid Undset. I know I've talked a lot about this, but this kind of challenge is something that really... I think it really helps me fight through something that I'll probably remember for a long time, because remembering Kristin Lavransdatter won't be that hard. Not only for the story, but all the time I've spent reading 1200 pages. Also kind of glad that this wasn't the three books. Instead, it's all the 3 books collected into one. That makes this maybe more of an experience. I have War and Peace in three different books, and I just don't think it will feel the same. But at least my wrists will be a lot more comfortable. And not make me miss my Kindle. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Big books are hard to hold on to for a prolonged period of time. Don't let War and Peace scare you off. Well, my girlfriend actually read the first part of War and Peace, and she was frustrated. But also she read the first Knausgård book before I read him, and her comment to that novel was, "This was a boring book, but he actually can write." So, yeah. I don't know what you'll extract from that small conversation, but we'll just see. But still, maybe I should try to start with Anna Karenina. So, my 5 big books, I actually ended up reading 6 big books over 500 pages, and my word count for 2022 was higher than 2021, so that's a win. So even though I didn't read that many big books, I read more bigger books than I would have done otherwise. Also, I read Middlemarch, which was split into 2 books, so I'm not counting it as 1 book. Stuff like this is hard to think about, but I get by. Sue Smith asks, have you read Brothers Karamazov? Yes, I read it last year and made a review of it. That's actually one of my most popular videos, probably because it's not that many people that have read the whole thing and then made a YouTube video about them. But also, I think if you've read Brothers Karamazov, you need somewhere to go afterwards. So that's probably why. Brothers Karamazov is also one of those books that will live with me forever. And quite possibly one of those books I might reread at some point. Right now I don't know why, but I have a lot of friends wanting to read it and having read it, and they want to discuss it, and those that are fans are just huge fans, which makes me want to read it. So I liked and disliked a whole lot of things from that novel, but some of those scenes in Brothers Karamazov just scarred me for life, and they all contained kids, because there's some horrible things happening. Yeah, let's just put it like that. So, Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi I can't remember her name now. Adichie also is one of those books that I really, really liked from this list. Also, just above 500 pages. So I think it has something good about it, reading bigger books. They involve you in another way than smaller books. Even though lighter novels tend to be more joyous reads for me, it's not like they live with me the same amount of time, if that all made sense. So, my next goal was reading 5 non-fiction novels. And I ended up reading 11 of those, and that's not including Knausgård. I know that Knausgård might be somewhere in between, but reading 11 non-fiction, this didn't feel like reading 11 non-fiction novels, because many of them were somewhere in between. So this is one of those examples. Thanks, Max. Hit the like button. Yes, I agree. Things my son needs to know about the world by Fredrik Backman. Sort of Fredrik Backman talking to his kid, and what to expect and what to not expect, what choices he could make and should not make. This is one of those novels that I absolutely adored, but it did not really feel like reading a non-fiction. But it's not like... I think my view of non-fiction has sort of changed during this year, because I started out thinking that it's factual things about factual places, factual people, but this is more like just his feelings. So, but still, non-fiction. I know this is pretty obvious for most of you, but to me that's what's sort of a new experience. Plowing Through the City of God by... Is that the same... I know I often reference movies, because that my repertoire when it comes to movies is quite a lot bigger. But is that the movie that was really, really awarded with a bunch of awards some years ago, 10 years ago, something like that? I shouldn't be surprised, but a whole lot of movies I watched have been books before. Some of them I've known about, but many of them I've not. Thank you, Elin, for that like. Lunachi Books is also, of course, a fellow YouTuber, so we all like the likes in that manner. Yes. So, with things my son needs to know about the world, we also have What I Talk About When I Talk About Running by Haruki Murakami. In much he talks about his love for running and his jazz cafe and things he has done. So, also not the most obvious of non-fiction books and reads for me. Also, Just Kids by Patti Smith, talking about herself and her upbringing. So, sort of a memoir. More memoir style than this maybe, but this might also be a memoir. Earlier I got a lot of, let's say, noise for shaking my books and people not seeing them. So if you're wondering which books I'm talking about during the stream, just leave me a chat and I'll try and say it again, because I know I shake books a lot. I also shake my hands a lot during my filming, so that sometimes annoys me as well, just because can't you keep your hands still for just a second? But yeah, we all have our struggles. Me and Karlove. So go with Augustine's Confession, great insight into his mindset. So more fans in the chat with Jake. Elin, I really enjoyed that Murakami book, and I can't wait to get my health back and on track and start running again. Agreed that I have that mutual thought, but it's really, if you like running and you like reading, I think it's an obvious read, because it's just such a cozy read. Obviously because he's in Hawaii and talking about, I took 2 hours running each day and then came back to write. And the weather was fine, the temperature was Nice. Sitting here in Norway in December, that seems like a thing that you might enjoy. I have seen quite a few of your videos, Øystein. Never thought about you waving your hands. Well, thanks. Good to know. I think some people are more disturbed by some things than others. For me, it's noises while drinking water, for example. So I looked through my last live stream a bit, and it wasn't that audible maybe, but a bit of those slurping noises from myself. I thought, never again, never again. I tried putting on a filter today. We'll see if it helps. Or hopefully it's just me it's annoying to, and not everyone else. I know I have issues with it, at least. Murakami book novelist as vocation. Yes, that's certainly on my list, together with one of my shelves here. I think I have 6 of his books, including the 1984 or 1Q84. I haven't figured that one out. I think maybe my next read will be Norwegian Wood. My girlfriend really loved that novel, and I think it would be nice to discuss a book we've both read together and both liked. So, since I like his writing style and like his character, because he seems so quirky, that might be a thing that we can have in common. So, this year I've really found that talking about books with others has really been like a whole new dimension. So when I meet friends that I talk to regularly, I ask them if they have book recommendations, just so I can read those books and then later on we can discuss them. Because I feel like I get to know my friends in a whole new way. It's not the same as when you've watched a movie and then come back and you talk about it. It's not the same feeling at all. I feel at least. So if you agree or not, you can leave in the chat, but it's something I've thought a lot about. Also, I have to mention now, if I have some English-speaking friends, and I of course do because you're in the chat. In Norwegian, we have this expression for the time we're in now between Christmas and New Year's Eve. We call it romjul. Translated, it would be Space Christmas. So that doesn't make any sense, but it's just the time in between the Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. So all the things that we do in between, if it's a sale at the store, it's romjul's sale. And if you're going to concert, it's romjul's concert, because everyone knows that that's the time of year you're talking about. So do we have an English expression for this? I tried Googling it, but it didn't seem like it. So yeah, I know about Boxing Day, and you have separate names for the separate days, but yeah, Elin says there's no word for it in English. And probably you don't need a word, it just would have looked better in the title for this video, I guess. It ended up being end of the year stream because it's also that, but Romjul stream would also be a thing. Maybe I'll do that next time. Yeah. Then we know that the English language needs a word for Romjul. So, the next segment of reading goals, and I know I have a lot of reading goals this year, and if that's healthy or not, I do not know, but at least my next goal was having read 3 children's novels. And looking back at it, I should probably have put like 5 there also, but it felt kind of wrong. Because reading children's novels is fun and easy, and adorable often. So, one of my favorites this year was Brødrene Løvehjerte by Astrid Lindgren. This is about 2 boys that die all the time, it seems. And I was just surprised of how dark this novel is, but that only made it better. And one of the true classics of the Scandinavian literature, I would say. Also with the author. But I read just in total 4 children's novels, even though I felt like I read more of them. Maybe because it's so fastly read. Fastly read is not the right word, but I read them so fast. I go through them fast. Yeah. So, and the next one, I've read some David Williams novels so far, but I think Gangsta Granny still is my favorite. Also read this year. It has some twists and turns which I enjoyed, and some of his novels has ended up disappointing me, like Billionaire Boy. I didn't enjoy that much, so yeah. But still, I think next year I'm going to read more of them. Hopefully my youngest kid, he's 3, will be more engaged in reading longer novels, but that we'll just see. Andrew Russell says, how much of your reading is Scandinavian non-translated literature? I do not think it's not that much of the non-translated literature, even though I've gotten some comments on that topic especially, but let me just have a quick look. I think of the 80 something books I've read this year, I think maybe about 5 of those hasn't been translated to English. I know many of them have been translated to other languages, but some of them not English, and that has actually surprised me a bit. But it's apparent that many of the novels are translated firstly to Swedish and Danish, of course, and then to German or Spanish. So I thought everyone would just translate it to English as the second one, but obviously and apparently not. So I think I can't really double check it now, but I think it's about 5. And each time I feel kind of bad because I feel like I should have read only books that had been translated to English, since I'm an English-speaking channel, but there you go. And oh, Elin says that she looked up her store graph and saw her numbers, and I don't think Goodreads has that function that you can look it up. So if Storygraph has that as well, that will be really, really great. But as I said, sometimes I feel bad about not reading things that has been translated to English, because it feels kind of stupid talking about books that you can't actually read. But I know, and that's something that I find very, very admirable. I don't know if that's the right word, but I do get impressed by some of my subscribers that are learning Norwegian. That just feels wrong, because why would you learn a language for 5 million people? But I think it's really cool, but it's also, maybe I'm just jealous that you're daring to do it, because I would have struggled. So my last goal as far as reading goals goes is that I wanted to read one graphic novel. Maybe because graphic novels seem to be something that was really, really popular, and something that's growingly popular in these times. I talked a little bit about it in the video I made about Christmas novels, and everyone is quite like preaching these graphic novels, and I do get it, because it's another experience than reading just words on paper. And I was really thinking about if I should read Sandman or read these ones, Heartstopper. And I ended up reading Heartstopper because of the hype, I guess. And I felt like reading Heartstopper would be other kind of novels than reading Sandman, since it's Neil Gaiman, and also Neil Gaiman I've read a lot from, but Ousman I hadn't read anything from. But I'm probably going to speak about these ones more later on in a video coming up, but I didn't actually feel like I was reading a book, and I don't know, it's just something about how little time I spent reading these. I couldn't get my head around like having these ones open and looking at pictures and enjoying the pages. I sort of just flew through them, and I liked the story, but that's it. I don't know if you can see, but so far my shelf has sort of been books I've read over there, and the books I've read currently this month down here, so that was not that interesting, but this month has been a good reading month at least. So, I read a few books this year, close to 100. Wow, that is a lot. But I wonder if it's even worth bothering with numbers next year, as long as I'm regularly reading, and I read a good few plays in 2022. I totally agree. For my sake, it's about having to push myself to read more, or it has been, and that's sort of the question for me as well going into 2023. Will I need to push myself to read more? Then again, I have my YouTube channel, so I probably have to read books to continue making these videos, which is sort of a good collaboration between me and myself. But reading 100 novels, it doesn't seem like you have to have a high number of reading goals number, or you should have a really high number. Doesn't make sense. Ellen would like to learn Icelandic. Even less people speak it, but it's such a beautiful language. It's kind of fun. I lived with an Icelandic lady some years ago, and I come from a part of Norway that has kept quite a bit of the Icelandic language, it seems, because sometimes when she spoke on the phone, I suddenly understood quite a lot of what she was saying. And of course, we're not that far apart, Norway and Iceland. Well, we are, but in many ways not. So, yeah, it's it would be fun to learn another language. I think if I should have learned another language, I think I would have gone for Chinese, purely because of the people count, man count, person count, because of the massive amount of people that speak Chinese or Mandarin. Is that correct? Is that the people that talk the most? Yeah, it's all going. Yeah. I speak a little German, but that's about it. Jake, hey, still struggle with English at times, and it is my only language. Yes, I can relate, and not because I also struggled with English, but I feel like I really struggle with Norwegian. But I feel like talking English in these videos makes me write and talk better Norwegian as well, so I feel it's getting better. Yes, Ellen, I know you like Sandman, and probably I will. I know there's a lot of those gorgeous editions of that specific novel going around these days, but at a horrific price. So maybe next Christmas I can hope to get one of those Sandman editions. Otherwise, I will buy the magazine kinds, if they are magazine kinds, but they look like magazines and they feel like magazines, so that's probably why I chose the Heartstopper novels now. You should read In by Will MacPhail, standing graphic novel. Oh, thank you. That one I haven't heard about. I let my subscribers boss me around, so that's no problem. You can be quite insistent on me reading specific books. It's not like that many people are. I don't own them, but I've borrowed them. Yes, Ellen, I know I have a problem with this, but I have a friend that have all of the Sandman novels, and he tried to force me to borrow them, or at least that was my feeling, but I had to put him down. I didn't want to borrow them, I wanted to own them. And that is a sickness, one might say. But it's my sickness, and yeah, so far it hasn't done me anything not that great, but one day it will, I'm sure. Maybe that will be one of my goals for next year. Borrow a book from a library or a friend. That actually didn't seem like a bad goal to have. So Jake says, for myself, I would rather read than any other entertainment. When you sit down and start reading, yeah. I don't know, I have a lot of... I always liked different forms of art, but reading is a very, very different form of art than anything else. Mostly because all of the things that are happening inside your own head. It's a really claustrophobic experience sometimes. But I also like watching movies and listening to music. Those are also activities I enjoy. do you think there is still a level of snobbishness towards reading graphic novels from some readers? Yes, I went to I went to several music festivals this year, and this was not a graphic novel, but I actually read the Linn Strømsborg Roskilde novel at that festival, and one of the people that I met at this festival asked me if I read a lot of books, and I showed him that novel, and he told me that that was not an actual book, and he sort of wanted to see how big the font size was, so he could see if it was a real novel or not. So that's very, very silly. I just reckon that that goes the same for graphic novels, that some people think that graphic novels aren't reading at all, I guess. I would just assume. But being on BookTube and Bookstagram and all those platforms, it feels like people are accepting a lot of things. That didn't seem right, but accepting people for what they read, or the other way around. I never meet that many snobbish people when it comes to reading, or I just don't talk to them, maybe. Yeah. There are a lot of great libraries in Oslo, but I do have many friends that likes to read, so probably I will go that route first. I've been to the new public big library in Oslo. That was quite nice, but we'll just see. Listen, yeah, I don't know what he thought about when he... I think this is a person that only views reading as reading books that are about 500 pages or more, I guess. I do not know. But it was kind of nice meeting a person that had prejudices against books, because then I could really feel like I had something to fight for in this manner. So I thought I'd just move on to my YouTube goals, because I had some goals for this channel this year, and some of them I've gone through with, and other ones I've not. So this is a perfect example of one of my goals this year that went pretty good. And that was have one live stream in this year. I had one in November, that was my first, and that didn't feel bad. Mostly because of you the people in the comments talking to me. Without you it would have been very weird. But having a live stream with people is not that bad. Sitting here all by myself with no responders would have been worse. But having live stream was one of my goals, mostly because this is terrifying. I know it doesn't maybe seem like that right now, but before I started this live stream, it feels awkward. Sitting here in front of no sound, only the fan from my computer. It's kind of weird. But I'm glad I've done it, and I do really enjoy it. So Andrew says, you certainly seem like a very personable person. You have recovered from the rut you were in a few videos back. As I would hope you are keen to continue with your channel. I do really like to make YouTube videos. It is quite fun, but it also takes up a lot of time. But that I don't see that as a problem in 2023, because I do really want to keep making videos. So yeah, and they do help me read. I have been in some reading ruts, but I think my reading ruts will be more seldom going into 2023, because I now know which types of books I need to get me out of them. So that's one of the big learnings for this year. So I hope that answered your question. Elin, that's why I don't do live streams. I don't think anyone would watch it. I do think someone would watch them, but yeah, I do think someone would watch them, but it's still terrifying. And I do not, I had people on my first live stream as well, so I don't think it would have been that terrifying without them. In some way, I just think that stream would be a lot shorter than it ended up being. So over to my next reading goal. I had a goal of interviewing one person for this channel. And Elin, in that regards, I've thought about you a lot, but I haven't gotten the courage to do an interview of some sorts. So, and that has mainly to do with expectations, I guess. Firstly, the expectations of not getting things perfect. I do like the challenge of trying to set up like an interview scenario, and it just didn't happen. I struggled to think of what kind of person, what kind of questions, what should you talk about, what should you ask about, all of those things. But now, as I'm doing live streams, it's almost a bit easier, because if you do interviews over the computer, it's easier to record and doing it. But if you have to meet someone and make time for it and plan all of those things, it's harder. So that's one of the goals that I didn't reach. And also I was kind of afraid of my English falling through. It's not always easy to find right words, which I find that I have exemplified in the last 15 minutes. It's something about speaking a second language for a prolonged period of time makes me sort of... yeah. It's something happening with my jaw, making it more difficult to talk normally. Yes. Yeah, Ellen, I agree. I would like to do an interview. I just have to make up my mind at some point. But it would also be fun to discuss books with someone over the internet, so maybe we'll have to speak later about that. So, one of my goals that I did not talk about, because I'm Norwegian, we do not like to talk about goals in general, is that I thought and I hoped that I would reach my 1,000 subscribers this year. And obviously 1,000 subscribers is a lot of people, I get that, but it's one of those milestones that I thought I would reach. Also, or I thought I would try to reach at least. Also, it's something to do with, I saw the average time to get to 1,000 subscribers is 18 months, and I've been doing this for 20 months now, so I thought I'd try to be average. And as I said, having goals can be a good thing. So, yeah, that didn't happen. I'm currently a bit above 800, which is still insane. But I also spent a lot of time doing videos, so it doesn't actually mean anything to reach 1,000 subscribers. It just would be fun. And yeah, as I said, you have to have goals of some sorts. So that is still a goal for... I'm pretty sure I'll reach 1,000 subscribers in 2023. At least let's just hope so. So, I forgot to say when I talked about my reading goals is that I actually have went down on my average rating this year. So last year I think I had 3.7 as a rating, but now I have 3.5, and I can't make up my mind if I've been more negative or I've just picked the wrong books. I do feel like it's the first thing. I now also think that I have a better way of finding out which kind of books is a 5-star book, because a 5-star book is a very specific feeling. If you've read a book that is a 5-star, you will be sad when that book is you read it to the end. And that feeling I've had recently, where I've just ended up not wanting to read a new book because I've been sad. Because it ended. So, when talking about subscribers, it was kind of fun. I had one thing happening this year that was... It's weird to talk about because it's no easy way to talk about these things, but in February, this is my statistics for the last 12 months and for my views. And if you look at February, early in the statistics, I suddenly had a huge rush of people watching my videos without me understanding why, I guess. And the reason is that YouTube started pushing one of my videos. It actually pushed a quite old video of me talking about 10 classics I wanted to read. And reading or watching videos about classics I find to be a very, very popular category on YouTube. People want to get into the classics and want to get inspiration to reading more classics. So I understand why, but I didn't understand why YouTube pushed it so much. But they're really fun. And I can say that all of my, or half of my subscriber count for this year is just for February. So it's kind of, YouTube is a weird place where you can have, suddenly you get 300 new subscribers in a month, and then you're going back to getting 20 a month, just because YouTube decided so. It's weird, but that was one of those videos that really did well for me this year. So Lunasha says, I had my channel for over 10 years. I'm far from 1,000 subs. Yes, I know all channels are not like. All channels are different. And yes, I only have to focus on myself. And it doesn't mean that much to me. It's just one of those things that I hoped would happen this year. So Jake is your approach to speaking is personable and real. Thank you, I guess. I like to keep it. Ooh. And now I'm blank, but I like to keep it down low. No, it's just not that. Okay, now I'm just not going to try to finish that sentence, but down to earth, I guess. And for the next comment, excuse me, your name is Jungastein or Jungastein. I know you comment a lot on my videos, and thank you, but I never know how to pronounce that name, so you have to excuse me. Thanks for that. Yeah, YouTube is quite fond of pushing classic book videos, and I do not exactly know why. I think it's because classics appeal to every country. That might be. But there's so many other books that also has a huge appeal. For example, in Norway we have, when you walk into a bookstore nowadays, you have trending on BookTok as an own category in the bookshelves, which is weird. But I know there's a lot of science done on this topic and looking into what BookTok and BookTube and Bookstagram does to readers, but I think BookTok maybe have a different effect on people than BookTube, I guess. I hope to be reading more classics, nevertheless, and learn about, well, what they're sort of having building stones to walk upon when reading other novels and understanding the references. So maybe I'll have a classic goal for next year, but reading classics is quite a roller coaster. Either I love them or hate them. That's one thing I've learned this year. Yes, Jake. Low-key is maybe the right way of putting it. Your English is excellent, thank you. I wish I could speak Norwegian. Did you know Joyce learned Norwegian just so he could write to Ibsen? That I did not know. That's very fun. Ibsen, of course, being one of our most famous Norwegians in general, but at least Norwegian authors. But I did not know that Joyce had learned to write Norwegian. Elin, one of my videos that still is getting many views is one back from 2011. The quality is really bad and I'm all over the place. It's not a good video, but I'm keeping it up. Yeah, that's one of the fun things about doing BookTube, I guess, that my first videos I also despise. Many of them I just want to delete, but there's something about just having them there and letting them shine. And when people comment on those videos, I feel bad for them, having watched them. And sometimes, why did you watch that video? Couldn't you have just watched another one? So, yeah, it's many weird thoughts you get when you have a BookTube channel. One of my, one person that saw my review of Will and Testament by Vigdis Hjorth commented, "Is this the only video on the internet about this novel?" And I wanted to write, hopefully yes, but I wrote yes, I think so. only based on her research, I guess. But that's one of those where I felt like, why didn't you watch another one? Joyce was familiar with almost every language spoken. He was a language monster. Yeah, that makes sense. But after reading Knausgård, I feel like I'm not going to read James Joyce in a while. At least not Ulysses. Maybe I'll start somewhere else. Or I'll definitely start somewhere else. Because I just don't think I would have survived reading Ulysses. So, also I have to mention when we're on the topic, welcome to the chat, Eddie. Don't read Joyce, he stinks. I often find Eddie comments a lot of my videos, and I often find amusement in how she talks negatively about some of the classics. I do enjoy that someone has that stance, because it's not that easy to say it out loud always. And when we're on the topic, sometimes YouTube has a really bad method of making comments, so it's hard to keep track of where my comments are and where the new comments are, and sometimes I miss comments, but sometimes also I get comments that are really, really fun. For example, my most viewed video ever is my video about my Kindle, and I made it a year ago, and it's like I never really remember all the things I've said in that video. But many people comment things like, so what you're saying is blah blah blah, and it's almost like they're just writing down the things I say in the video, and I comment, yes, that's exactly what I said. So thank you for that transcribing, I guess. Also, people are mean in the comments, which I find, well, not frustrating because I don't really care, but it's fascinating that people spend time on my channel talking negatively to other people commenting my videos, which is just kind of insane. Eddie, it was hard to have that stance in a department of 10 English teachers. Often I was the only one with my opinion. I get that. It's something I've thought about after you've commented other videos I've had, that might be a very unpopular opinion. Yeah. I guess if you read Joyce and enjoyed him, that would be one of those authors that you won't forget. Andrew says, I can't read classic after classic after classic. Can only take them in small doses. Just maintain a veneer of intellectuality. Yeah. I also have to split them up and read it some over the total of a year, but not in a row. And Sue says Catch-22 was very strange. Yeah, and that one I've seen the movie too, so I struggle to think that I will read the novel, even though it's tempting. And Ellen says some people should go read a book instead of spreading hate, and that's, yeah, I totally agree, and that's the interesting part, because they're in a booktube channel. They should know better. I sort of often feel like that. If you seek out a booktube channel where people talk about reading, you should have the knowledge to just keep it to yourself if you're only going to be mean. If I ever started a booktube channel, it would probably be called Unpopular Opinions. Yep, I think you should, Eddie. That would be fun. I would watch. Yeah. So, let's see here. I thought I'd talk about my... I have some videos that really, really did well last year, and they're all related to things that are popular to search. Obviously, I get that this is obvious for people, but those are seldom the videos that are fun to make. I think I have one video that did quite well last year that I also felt was kind of fun to make, and that was this video about me and my reading chair, and just my thoughts when sitting in my reading chair, looking at my bookshelves. So not the biggest topic, but it shows that people really like to Google reading chair. It's very specific. I get if people like Google reading nook or cozy places to read or something like that. That I could have done myself, but a reading chair just seemed a bit weird, I should say. But I like to make the movies where I sort of film new things or learn new things. That's basically it. So I hope next year I will make videos where I film new things and learn new things. And the most boring videos I make is actually the videos where I talk about books I haven't read. And I know many people don't like to look at those as well. But in 2022 I felt like that was the year when I hadn't read that many books and couldn't sort of make only videos about books that I had read. So that's why I've made lists of books I wanted to read. Which feels normal, but it doesn't feel like the videos that I would have watched myself. So next year that'll hopefully change. So let's see. Andrew says, have you read A Tale of Two Cities? It is my favorite classic. And you mentioned Frankenstein. Well, I don't know. I have a British friend that said I should avoid Dickens for a while, and sometimes you just don't know why you've put some books on hold, but I think that's the reason, because he was kind of saying that it's not the right way to start. You should just wait a second and read a lot more before you try reading Dickens. And I actually tried starting Great Expectations yesterday, so I think I might read Charles Dickens next year. But A Tale of Two Cities has been on my list and is standing in my shelf. But I don't hope it resembles Frankenstein in any way. Also, I hope to read Dracula in 2023. I hope that one will be better than Frankenstein. I know they're not related, but in my mind they're sort of related anyways. So, I would hate everyone to like my likes. What would we ever talk about? Yeah. See what you mean? We have to have some tension in what books we like and not like, at least when we're talking about them. Some books I would prefer if everyone liked and we could just talk about how much we like them. But it's not that many books that goes for. Ellen says she doesn't get mean comments. I often get mean comments just on those book videos I have that's more popular than my regular ones, because that's the ones that people discover and that they don't subscribe to my channel, but they watch those videos and then spread hate on those videos. So that's wasteful. Whitman. I see that I have to check out Walt Whitman. It's just one of those names that has been floating around without me ever thinking about him anymore. But if you have a Walt Whitman novel that you should start with, people are welcome to comment that in the chat. Yeah, so Jake says, the chair, seeing others are as unusual as yourself is always encouraging. Yeah. I just noticed your sweater. Is that like Ron Weasley sweater, but with your initial? It's if so, awesome. That's Eddie commenting. Yes, I talked about it in when we first started this stream. I got this from my mom for Christmas, and it's absolutely the Ron Weasley sweater, or the Harry Potter and all the Weasleys sweater, I guess. I asked my mom earlier this year, because I often don't tend to like presents. I feel like Christmas is a bit overrated in that sense. you can get me something if you have something that you feel like I would enjoy, or if it's something special or something that made you think about me or something like that. But the general just buying gifts for all people you know feels kinda silly. So I asked my mom if she would knit sweaters for all the members of my family with their initial, and it was a huge success. So probably my favorite gift of this year. Yeah. I hope my mom watches this live stream, so not that I'm not sure she entirely understands this conversation, but if she watches, at least she'll notice that I'm wearing the sweater. Uh, you read Miss Dalloway, you can handle Dickens. That's probably true, but I wouldn't have read Mrs. Dalloway again because it was an experience that I wouldn't have wanted to experience again. Let's just put it like that. Dickens is awesome, funny as hell, and his people are the realist. Dickens was a bad mofo. One line by Dickens, and you know the person. Amazing, a big genius. Yeah, Dickens is not one of those people I've given up on, and probably will be one of those authors I will read next year. So, if you have strong feelings around which books I should start with, all of you are welcome to make your pick. I probably have like 5 of his novels in my shelf. That's a bit... Yeah, I have too many books, but what can you do? Song of Myself by Whitman contains everything. Out of the cradle, endlessly rocking, is highly concentrated, and its theme is death as an ultimate salvation. Seemed kinda tough. But I'll look into them afterwards. Last time I think I deleted the chat after I finished recording, but this time I think I'm keeping the chat automatically, so that's a good thing. So, I thought we'd go over to talking about my reading goals for next year. So, as you know, we've talked about this some already. Sue says never too many books. Of course you're right, but it feels kind of bad saying it out loud sometimes. Because people come to my place and ask, have you read all of these? And obviously not. So, next year I'm really considering what kind of reading goals I should have. And as I've talked about earlier, it's like I've read 53 or 54 books this year. That feels great. And next year my audiobooks will be incorporated into my reading goals, which is also better. But the big question is, should one go for having like 100 books you should read next year or 10? Because since I make these videos, I will read books, and since I like reading books now, I will read books, but reading 100 books will feel like a chore. I'm pretty certain it will feel like a chore, because then I will have to read every day throughout the year, and probably I will choose other books of shorter stature, if that was correct. Shorter books. I will choose shorter books if I have to read 100 books next year. And if I make myself a reading goal of 100 books next year, it will feel like it at least. So, I know I don't need to decide quite yet, but I have to think about it some more. It's important to have some goals. But the thing I discovered when making this live stream and preparing for this live stream, of course, is that I will end up having to have a specific country goal this year as well. And maybe I should focus on that instead. Like reading authors from 10 different countries. And in that process, I thought, and you are very welcome to give me feedback in the comments here, if I should do it whilst I read Nobel Prize literature winners. So reading 10 Nobel Prize literature winners from 10 countries that I haven't read so far. And I haven't checked, because this might be difficult many of the people that have won this award has been Nordic or English or American. So I don't know. I will go through the list later and see what kind of people have won that award. And some of them, of course, I have already read. And as I've talked about this past year, those books I will probably remember longer than other ones, even though I don't always understand it. So that's the main thing, I think. Yeah. Eddie says don't try to read 10 Nobel Prize books back to back because often they are somewhat heavy in tone and it would be tough to read several back to back. I agree with that. I think I should probably try to read like. That's also the issue with these kinds of goals because I end up wanting to read them all in one go and just to lower my shoulders and rest for the rest of the year. But that's where the chore thing comes in because you feel like you want to read them just to get it over with instead of enjoying the process, and that makes it dumb. So maybe 6 is a good number because then you can have 2 months for each of them. But I would have ended up wanting to get ahead of my schedule either way. Also, sometimes you read a Nobel Prize book or Pulitzer book and you are left scratching your head wondering who got bribed on the committee to vote to that book. Yeah. Yes, there. It's often a question that pops up when I've read some prize-winning or award-winning books, but not all of them. But I think maybe I'm better at choosing the right kind of books this time around, so that will certainly help me. But you are right. There often are a different kind of books. They often are a different kind of book than like TikTok books, at least. So, yeah, I've struggled to decide how specific I should be with my reading goals. Have you all made reading goals so far for the next year? Do you have any specific reading goals that you would like to do? And do you have any specific reading goals that you have every year, or do you make new ones each year? Because I feel like I want to have new goals for each year at least. So something I've seen some booktubers doing before is having like a Wheel of Fortune to decide which kind of books you should read. And I've thought about maybe having like making some kind of game where people just give me recommendations and then I have this random thing where I read whatever people suggest for once a month or once every couple months. So that's also something to think about. Sue asks, do people on here read several books at once? I've certainly been doing this a lot more now than before, but mostly because you're always in a different kind of mood. You don't always know which mood you're going to be in. So you start one book and you're happy about that one, but if it's a longer book, suddenly your mood changes and you want to read something else. But this is where I've found audiobooks to be a good thing, because I almost always listen to an audiobook in like the same time as I read a book. So I can go from reading a book and 5 seconds later I can be listening to an audiobook. But here you have, or at least I have to have kind of different books, because sometimes I mix them. Certainly if I go like, if there's less than 10 seconds between them, I can get a bit confused. But yeah, that has helped me at least, having kept on going and not taking too long breaks. There's a funny novel by Edward Obin that spoofs the literary prize selection process. It's called Lost for Words. Great satire. Duly noted. And Elin says, I'll do a regular 50 books and I'm planning on doing the Shimmering Worlds Reading Challenge in 2023. That one I do not know about. I have to look it up. Yeah. Seems like people don't like to read more than one book at a time. I have to say that I thought that every bookworm actually read several books at a time, but that's how damaged one might get from looking at BookTube all the time, where people are partially insane. So I know my girlfriend can only read one book at a time. She doesn't like to mix between several books. And Jake reminds me that whenever you consider asking a group like this, remember Mrs. Dalloway. Yes, that's referring to a poll I did where I asked my audience which book I should read next, where Mrs. Dalloway was one of those. So, yeah. And you guys ended up polling for Mrs. Dalloway, and I've been questioning why you wanted me to suffer like that afterwards, but yeah, it's a good point, Jake. I'll take that along with me. The only reading goal I have is very niche. I want to read about the Pacific Theater in World War II. For my non-fiction reading, so for non-fiction, my focus will be on that. Yeah. Specific goals are better than non-specific goals, I find. So, very cool to learn about a new topic. I also have been considering doing somewhat of the same thing, not with any World War II related stuff, but finding myself reading more books about music related stuff, because I really enjoy music, and I think there are a lot of band memoirs and books about musicians or music in general I would enjoy. So that's also on the table. So we're nearing the end of this stream because I struggle to speak. So that's basically why. Also, I have 2 small children, so I have to go to bed at an early. Let's just put it that way. So my last question will be for this live stream is, what kind of videos do you want to see on my channel next year? Because it's obviously impossible for me to know what kind of videos people want to watch. And I do know which kind of videos I should make if I wanted more people to view my channel. And that's what we've been talking about earlier, making videos about classic novels, or talking trash on the Kindle, or saying something mean about audiobooks, or anything like that. I know that's very popular, but it's also boring to talk about in more than one video, maybe. So if you have suggestions for what kind of videos you want to see on my channel, please give them to me so I can think about it. Elin says, I would love to see a reading vlog, especially from your hytte. Yes, I do like to be on my hytte or at my cabin, and pretty much that is my favorite place to read, because it's so quiet and peaceful. And the air is different up there. Sound like an old man now, but it's true. It's also darker there, so you sleep better, which is very important. I was considering actually doing, or it's not very serious yet, but I've seen people doing reading sprints on BookTube, and I've been thinking that that would be fun for me. I don't know if it's fun for other people, but it would sort of be good to have like a thing where you just read books with people online. It would at least make me read more concentrated than I'm usually reading, because my concentration isn't that good. It's bad. My concentration is really bad. That should be honest when we're nearing the end of this year. So, as you've just mentioned, more music books, they don't seem to be covered much on BookTube. Thank you for that, Richie. I have been quite fascinated after reading, especially this one this year, Patti Smith's novel. I do understand, and I do sort of remember how much I like reading about artists. It's something about their view of life, and in this instance, her just talking about that she wanted to be an artist all her life and then just making it happen. It's just fascinating. And I actually have acquired quite a bit of music related stuff in my shelves. So maybe that's the route to go next year. I think I'll end it here. So thank you all for participating in the chat. Without you, this would have been awkward and terrible. So thank you very much. And I am looking forward to seeing more of you in 2023. So thank you all. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you later. Bye!